see that my team mainly work in the field of dielectric composites, especially dielectric nanocomposites. You know, various types of composites, mainly metallic composite, polymer composite. They are under wide study as related with practical needs. For example, my research team performed some common study with a group of professors Neil Hamandar on metallic composites and on the polymer composite. But now I'd like to inform you about direction of study of my research team on dielectric composites. Dielectric composites are out of the wide research, unfortunately. In spite of they have some application, and you know, for example, laser based on the glass ceramics, oxide composite, or you know, white light emitted dyes also. At the same time, we see the lack of this study. I'd like to remember that we deal with so-called hybrid composites. Hybrid composite is the materials consisted of matrix, to which at least two components, fillers, of different nature are introduced. It should be emphasized that incorporated fillers have to be in the form of particles, not molecules, atoms, or ions. Only such type materials can be called as composite materials. As for us, we deal with volumetric, like mixture, dispersive type of composites, and not with layered or sandwich type composites. Also, only if the fillers are in the form of nanoparticles, it means that at least one of their sizes is less than 200 nanometers, then these materials can be called as nanocomposites. Why we deal with hybrid composites, which compose of filler of two types? We are working on the development of optical materials, in particular for light sources, markers, etc. One of the fillers, the main one, should provide the composite with the desired optical and particle luminescent properties. We use luminescent powder of complex oxide compounds. Second type of filler has to correct the mechanical properties disturbed by the main filler, change the spectrum of optical absorption, and or provide new qualities, for example, electrical conductivity, and so on. We use carbon nanomaterials, graphene oxide, or reduced graphene oxide, and carbon nanotubes. So, hybrid composites can be easily tailored in the way that their K, for example, optical properties, are determined mainly by the embedded particles, while the microscopic or bulk properties, including chemical and mechanical ones, are determined mainly by the matrix. In many cases, the researchers deal with composites where matrix and filler interact each other relatively quickly. Then strong interaction between each component ensure its stability, while weak interaction of components allow to find combinations that provide new properties in comparison to matrix, electrical, optical, and so on. At the same time, it should be emphasized that we'd like to consider composite material not as mixture, but the case is that when components of the materials interact synergetically, creating new materials with new qualities. It means that particles of filler have to interact in some manner with matrix, forming new structures, new movements, new energetic levels, etc. Thus, from a physical science of view, we try to find the manifestation in the role of interaction between the components, matrix and fillers, as well as between fillers of different type located in the matrix. To date, we have worked mainly with composites containing only one fillers. It is easy to analyze the result. Some definition also. It is generally accepted to distinguish the following type of interaction in composite: covalent bonding, electrostatic interaction, interviewing of micromolecules, mechanical clutch. It's obvious mentioned interaction are determined by the mutual diffusion of the atoms and molecules located near contacting surfaces of the matrix and fillers, by the charges of atoms and ions, by overlapping electron shells of the atoms located in matrix and fillers, by excited energy transfer. As a result, interface transitional layers can be formed between matrix and particles, and properties of these layers can differ from the properties and characteristics both of initial matrix and filler. Here you see this simple model of this composite. You see the bulk matrix, particles of fillers, interface border between matrix and interface border between filler and interface, and you see the layer over the particle. It's called as interface. Interface. It is not interface. It is very important. The influence of the interface is not so significant at low filler concentration, but at the higher concentration, or at the same volume fraction, but with smaller particles, the overlapping of the modified shells, interfaces of the particle, become noticeable. You see the row from low to high at the highest concentration of filler particles. As a result, a new continuous phase can be formed by the interface materials where the particle of the parent matrix and starting fillers are placed. The property of such materials can be significantly different from the properties of the starting composite, where the contribution of the filler was low. Also, the mechanism of interaction between components of various nature and in any type of composite are in principle predictable. The role or contribution of such interactions to specific materials, especially if they are nanocomposites, requires special study. Now, let's observe some results concerning interaction of components in nanocellulose filled with oxide and compound materials. This is polymer composite. Why nanocellulose? Hybrid composites can meet the growing demand for portable and wearable devices of flexible electronics. As today the global market for flexible electronics is more than $31 billion. Unfortunately, the main matrix components of the flexible electronics scheme are polymeric petrochemical products, for example, such as polyethylamide, polyamide, and which are harmful to humans and for the environment. Therefore, an important problem for science and technology today is the development of flexible electronic devices based on biocompatible, renewable materials of green technology. Nanocellulose is biologically compatible with living and plant organisms, as the source of this production is plant biomass, the reserves of which on Earth are in fact unlimited and renewable. Here you can see some description of the cellulose structure from fringed fiber to microfiber to macrofiber to fiber of the plant. You see some description of the structure by Ukrainian language also. We see the structure also for other component of the composite, this graphene oxide and reducing graphene oxide. And nanocomposite, nanocellulose can be obtained from organosolvent pulp of various plants by treatment in solution of sulfuric acid. Nanofibrils are capable to be self-organizing. Their length is about of 200 nanometers and diameter is near 10 to 15 nanometers. This system under study are very complicated system. So we combine in one research group theoretical calculation study, computer simulation study, and experimental study. Here I tried to present some our approach for computational studies. Use the structure of distinguished cellulose at the top and the modeled structure of cellulose and graphene combined with some molecule COH and so on. As a result of this computer simulation, we can predict the stable composition and also to calculate distances between atoms and energy of binding between components of the composite. In our experimental study, we used the nanocellulose produced by Valery Barbash in National University Kyiv Polytechnic Institute and multiple carbon nanotube provided from Yuri Sementsov, he is here. Below you see some images of the sample was miscanthus salts, organosolvent pulp before and after alkaline treatment. Also you see the suspension of this nanocellulose and you see the images of self-organized film of nanocellulose on the substrate. Sorry. Then aimed to find the manifestation of interaction between matrix and cellulose, between carbon nanomaterials. We provided the Raman and infrared spectra, and we see some changes of this structure that reveal the interaction between these components. Some conclusion in Ukraine, but at this study, we did not find the manifestation of the interface layer. We see also the interaction between components. Also, you see the form of this nanocellulose. You see the view of the main building of Kyiv Polytechnic University through the film. Top. And you see the spectra of transmittance of these films with graphene oxide and reduced graphene oxide. Also, you see the atomic force microscope images of these nanocellulose films. And also at the bottom you see the view of the composite with some oxide, with luminescent oxide. You see a good visibility of the surface of oxide nanoparticles and reduced graphene inclusion by nanocellulose matrix. Based on this data, we can evaluate the band gap of this of the component and of the composite, and we see that evaluated EG changes if compare the component matrix. And different sign of the EG value changes should be evaluated as a manifestation of the matrix failure and interaction. Also, we evaluated the end of the absorption using so-called Urbach approach, and we see that there are many defects and destroyed components of these molecules. So we concluded that incorporated oxides and particles of carbon nanomaterials destroy crystallinity of the nanocellulose matrix and increase impact of the defects. We use also luminescent method of investigation. We see the complex band of luminescence in the spectra, and they are excited not only in the absorption band, but also when they are excited in the band gap. This fact is important, as cellulose molecules themselves, in their pure form, are not luminescent, we supposed up to last time. It is generally believed that there are several additive sources of the cellulose luminescence. which are molecular fluorophores, defects or impurity specific to cellulose materials. Carboxyl, carbonyl groups of organic compounds, single and conjugated aromatics such as furan, oxyfuran, and so like. And we concluded that incorporated oxides and nanocarbon particles influence the photoluminescent properties of nanocellulose composites. But analysis of this influence is too complicated to be promising for clarifying the role of interaction. Therefore, we try to use luminescent oxide nanoparticles as fillers and the photoluminescent probes. Here you see some other type of composite basis on nanocellulose, the stage of the preparation. This is a thick films, near 1 and more millimeter. The sample reveals some degree heterogeneity that probably is related with large sizes of oxide particles and their agglomeration. At the bottom you see the one of the particles embedded into nanocellulose matrix. And concerning luminescence properties, we see the spectra at the left column, the photoluminescence excitation for nanocellulose, spectral photoluminescence at the right for nanocellulose. In the middle you see the spectra of photoluminescent excitation and spectra of luminescence of powder, only of powder. And at the bottom you see the spectra of composite. And we see that photoluminescent spectra of active in luminescence, europium 3 plus ions, differ for powder and for composites. So we can conclude the luminescence of the composite, it is not a superposition of nanocellulose emission and oxide particle emission. The spectra differ by profiles and by contribution of the band and lines. The line position also differ. You see that at the middle of this slides. We also use some other type of oxide powder in our investigation. This composite conclude powders of luminescence oxide aluminate stones doped with europium and dysprosium ions, so-called sour head powders. This is the stage of the preparation, the view of these composite materials. They use the composite materials at the bottom performed for conductivity measurements, for electric conductivity measurements. And it is interesting that these materials reveal some other type of luminescence, not photoluminescence. That means luminescence excited by light. But this luminescence is excited by mechanical stress, mechanoluminescence. Mechanoluminescence is a type of luminescence induced under any mechanical stress in solids. Mechanoluminescence also other names such as triboluminescence, piezoluminescence, deformational luminescence, and stress-activated luminescence. Mechanoluminescence allows to convert energy of mechanical movement to light. So mechanoluminescence use is a very attractive and important way to solve the problem of energy crisis. We have to use the energy of movement of our body to obtain the light. You see the scheme of various possible practical application of the mechanoluminescence. There are various methods to induce and measure mechanoluminescent properties, ultrasonification, compression, and so on. The last one are used at the Institute of Physics of Polish Academy of Science, and now they are developing in Kyiv University. You see these devices for pressing the samples at the top, and the device and the figure, the images of this these samples that emit the green light. Also some more complicated devices and interesting devices was installed in the Institute of Physics in Warsaw. You see these devices, the main part of this is this revolver, the gun, that emit the ball of rubber and strike the samples, and after the optical system registers this luminescence and evaluated the energy of this bullet before and after strikes. We can use and to show the dependence between energy and of this bullet and energy of luminescence. Here you see the scheme of this luminescence that explain this luminescence properties. The main part of the scheme is the level of traps of electrons. Before experiment we have to excite to populate these levels by electrons, and after we impact by stress mechanical, for example, electrons go to the conductive band, and after we see the luminescence of europium 2+ ions. And spectral photoluminescence, so-called persistence, very, very low living luminescence, and mechanoluminescence. They are the same, that confirm the same nature of this type of luminescence. Also, you see the luminescence of a composite of this oxide with in nanocellulose matrix. The luminescence is explained by presence of two crystalline phases of this oxide. But we see when we prepare the composite below, the spectra changes. So this is a revelation. The sour yet oxide strongly quenches of the nanocellulose luminescence, and this is a manifestation of the interaction between this matrix and cellulose matrix in oxide. Another type of interaction that related with formation of interphases layers was studied on the glass ceramic system, oxide glass ceramic systems. Here's a scheme where this glass ceramics can be used and now are under wide development. You see at the left the scheme of the white light emitter diode. Here conclude lead chips, then phosphor, based on silicon resin, and as a result of combination of two light, blue and yellow, we see the white light emitted. But some destruction of these materials, silicon resin, take place on the application of this, on the using of this light diode. You know about this. So there are some attempts to remove the polymeric covers by covers based on glass, inorganic glass. And so these changes allow to increase the LED operation time. If luminescent oxide emitter is incorporated in the host, we also, this situation try to predict by our calculation. Today, the similar composite development without an a priori method of forecasting is ineffective because they is performed by numerical cycle of trials and error. Therefore, then are the needs for data of theoretical calculation, computer simulation. So we work also in this direction. Some results. We use so-called molecular dynamic methods when we regard separately crystal structure. Then we combine various molecular groups in red, and combine the composition of the glass under experimental study. You see the middle. Then we use this program for molecular dynamic calculations, and we obtain the composition, the structure of the composite materials. We see that the molecule and fragment of crystals and fragments of the glass incorporate each other. So they form this interface layer. Then we compare this data about some experiment, especially with density of the composite materials, with XRD data, and we see a good correlation between calculated and experimental data for density and XRD patterns, and this correlation can serve as criteria for choice of glass and glass ceramics initial composition and other calculation parameters. We see that this interface layers, and we evaluate the form and large of these interface layers, and we evaluated it as near to 20 nanometer. Then we take the composition of this interface layer, this is it, for so-called DFT calculation, and we find the electronic structure, partial density of states, and these interface layers, and we can compare this data with experiment. So you see some experimental data about morphology of this glass ceramics, various types of glass ceramics, distribution of atoms on the glass, and you see the image of the composite materials, glass with embedded oxide particles, and some data about XRD of glass, powders and glass ceramics. And I'd like to emphasize the possibility of use the luminescence method. As if compared with study of interfaces in metallic on semiconductor composite, it is very difficult to study these layers in dielectric materials. You know, the problems. As dielectric accumulates the electrons from the electronic microscope, so the resolution of this image is low. When we cover the dielectric by metal for higher resolution obtaining, we lost the information about interfaces. So we developed the luminescence method of identification of interfaces. So here you see the luminescence of various objects. This is a glass. They show a wide band luminescence. You see the luminescence of glass doped with European 3+ ion probes. And we see also the luminescence of powders that contain luminescence active European 3+ ions. And we see the The high sensitivity, I try to emphasize, the high sensitivity of the intrinsic photoluminescence characteristics to a significant number of noticeable factors has to complicate the definition of the role of intermediate interface layer. But the presence of luminescence area ions in both the glass and the crystalline component of glass ceramics can significantly improve the situation. These ions can act as luminescent structural probes. So we see this spectra in detail. You can find that the PL details for the glass ceramics are similar to the photoluminescence of europium 3+ ions located both in the glass and in the particle of the free powder. However, there is no exact match for the first and the second case. So we can conclude the noted difference is caused by the photoluminescence of the europium 3+ ions located in the interface area that are formed between the glass and the crystal particles. This is the data obtained by us for another type of the composite. They are similar to show it before. There's some other experiment of this type where we change the size of the nanoparticles. This is the luminescence of europium 3+ ions at the top in the glass, and at the bottom you see the luminescence of the europium 3+ ions in powder, crystalline powders. And in the middle you see the spectra of the glass ceramics where particles of various size of the particle of various size were embedded. So also we performed some experiments with temperature treatment, and as a result, optical manifestation of interfaces were found both for the oxide carbon nanocellulose and glass ceramics composite. Manifestations of the interaction between components of the studied organic and inorganic nanocomposites and the effect of the interaction of the morphology, structure, and optical properties provide an opportunity for such material engineering. We hope that cumulative action of various types of compounds, namely nanocellulose, oxide particles, and carbon nanostructures, will allow us to create the novel materials which combine the useful properties of mentioned above individual components. Micro nanocellulose composite materials embedded with luminescent oxide are promising to be used for creation of advanced flexible luminescent devices. Some of the developed glass and glass ceramics materials can be perspective for creation of luminescence downshifting cores for high power white light emitted dyes. But also we understand that many efforts have to be made on the way to find optimal composition for elaboration of technological maps for production of the noted above types of luminescence materials. Many researchers were also involved in this study. They worked at the National University of Life and Environmental Science of Kyiv in Ukraine, also in Taras Shevchenko National University of Kyiv, Ukraine, also in the National Technical University of Ukraine, Igor Sikorsky Kyiv Polytechnic Institute, Ukraine, and some people from the Institute of Physics of Polish Academy of Science, Warsaw, Poland. Many thanks for your attention. Thanks to ISNIP Organizing Committee. Special my thanks to Polish Academy of Science for the opportunity of the research state and experimental measurement provided by the Institute of Physics of Polish Academy of Science, Warsaw, for me and my colleagues now during our war with Russia for independence of Ukraine. I am grateful to these famous people for supporting me and my wife in Warsaw, as well as for allowing my scientific activity at the Institute of Physics after our immigration from Kyiv suburbs in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that presentation. It was rich in information. some of the concepts were new for me. So, you mentioned before about the cellulose part as a material, as a dielectric material. Under your experiment, you found that it emits light in two cases. First, under the light bombardment, for example, and the second part is under the mechanical stress. The light emission. You mentioned before about the photoluminescence of the cellulose. Yes, you said you found that it emits light. Oh, in two cases. The first is the well-known case when bombarded by light. We'll have light. Light.
By light?
Yes. We'll have a photoluminescence.
It is not a bombardment, it's an excitation.
Yeah.
It is an excitation of, it is not radiation treatment.
Okay.
It's also photon excitation with photon of relatively low energy.
Okay.
So this light doesn't destroy the structure of cellulose.
How about the second case? The emission of light under the mechanical stress. I'm asking about the second case, in the mechanical stress. So it emits light also under the mechanical stress. So is this the case only for the cellulose, or you did experiment with other materials? And for example, can we have the same results for other dielectric material?
Understand completely your question. As understood, we speak about comparison of the luminescence, photoluminescence, and luminescence under mechanical stress. Practically, they are the similar luminescence manifestation, as the nature of this luminescence is the same. It's determined by the structure of traps of electron and the forbidden gap. So, the case when you release this electron for the test by light, or you release this electron for the trap by the mechanical stress, we have the same result.
This is the case that you presented. Is there other cases, for example, you worked on and you had similar results? You did? I mean the material itself. You presented a different type of luminescence, the photoluminescence and the luminescence of the cellular, I believe, the cellulose. I'm sorry. Yes, this was the case. So, other than the cellulose, is there other materials that gave the same result or close? I'm interested of the.
I have no answer just now. We can speak this question after, I suppose. Okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Professor, for the presentation. I actually have a question about the first part. When you talked about the carbon-based nanocellulose, you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that it's incorrect to refer to a material as a composite unless there is a mixture at an atomic level. And then you mentioned, and you referred to the material as a composite. So my question is related to the elaboration part. How can you be sure that the carbon nanotubes are well dispersed in the nanocellulose matrix, and so you can refer to the material as a composite? Because you didn't mention or show any figure that confirms that. How can you be sure that there is a well-dispersed dispersion of the carbon nanotubes inside the material?
Thank you. Really, when we speak about the large area for investigation, like from 1 to 3, 4, 5 millimeters. So we have the heterogeneous materials in this scale. This is the area like to 100, 200, maybe 500 nanometers, where we have the homogeneous dispersion. Yeah? Then we have the other area without carbon. And then we have another area with the same dispersion of the nanocomposite. But when we speak about large size, so it is heterogeneous materials. We use electronic microscopy for this investigation, also in some cases atomic force microscopy.
So, as I understand, there isn't a way to be sure that, for example, carbon nanotubes are agglomerated in an area material?
Sure.
And then you
In
can-
some cases, we see the area with agglomeration of carbon materials. Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
It is difficult to prepare the sample with very high dispersion, with very high homogeneity. But when we speak about possible application, especially for some mechaniluminescence and so on, it is not so important. As really, we use the devices, the materials of large scales, of large dimensions, not in the nano-sized dimension.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Nedirko. I think there is no other question. Like that, we close this session to go to take a coffee break, and after that, we continue the poster session. Thank you.